Welcome back to Senate Education, Thursday, April 21st. H703, which is the House Economic Development Bill, is what we're looking at right now. Mr. Hall has taken us through it, and he has also started to draft amendments, which we won't jump into quite yet. Do you have those amendments?
Oh, no, sorry. This is for
Okay. Mr. Hall, would you email the amendments to Daphne and she will print them out?
The one he mailed us.
Yeah, did he not email you, Daphne?
I got an email from David.
I got it as well.
Yeah. When was that email?
Well, David, if you would just email the most updated draft of amendments to Daphne, just H703, she can print them out right here. Because it might have changes in my name.
I don't know how long that's going to take, Daphne. It's been taking emails like 10 minutes to get through the building.
Well, while we're waiting, Daphne is waiting for that to arrive. We do have joint fiscal with us. And Patrick, good to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, of course.
So
Glad to be in here for the first time.
For you is in H703 as passed by the House. In section 3, this is around the governance structure, the Vermont Technical Education in Vermont. There were several points where the Agency of Education is concerned that dollars are being appropriated to joint fiscal and not to AOE. And we're wondering if you might help us understand why joint fiscal wants to do this and why joint fiscal should do this.
Well, the answer to this should be relatively simple. It's my understanding that joint fiscal was asked if we could do this.
Okay.
And we said that if you would like us to do it, we'd be happy to.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Ways and means.
It was waiting. Yeah, we learned yesterday that was where this took place. Okay. So, well, that's convincing testimony, that's for sure. Does anyone?
I did just briefly talk to Catherine about that point this morning, and that's essentially the feedback I got from her on it.
Okay, Senator Persler.
I think I know the answer to this, but do you have any, would you have any concerns or have any comments of having AOE do it instead of JFO?
We don't have any concerns about AOE doing it, nor do we have any concerns about us doing it.
So there's no real preference there. Do committee members have a preference? I mean, we heard from the Agency of Education that they would like to do it. We're hearing from joint fiscal. I don't. Do you want to keep it where it's at, or do they want Agency of Education?
I was convinced by AOE's testimony that it made sense. That I got the sense from Secretary Prince, not that they just wanted to do it for control or something, but it just, since they have to do the report, it makes sense that they're the ones writing the contract with the contractor. I mean, the contractor's doing the work. Who's responsible for that? It just seems, since AOE is taking a handoff from the contractor, we would want that continuation in the process to have AOE involved the whole time. But unless I heard from, what we heard from Representative James seemed like maybe Ways and Means was kind of concerned about the ability to AOE do it.
That's how I got.
But my guess is that Ways and Means deals with JFO all the time. They feel comfortable. They know those people. What's that JFO do it? They don't really know maybe the AOE.
Yeah.
If I may.
Well, let me let Senator Lyons respond first.
Let him go.
Sure. Okay. Go ahead, Patrick.
I do think that part of the want may have just been to have some sort of legislative involvement in the report. But beyond that, I'm not quite sure what other concerns they might have had. So I think that's about my level of understanding with respect to that. It's just the legislative involvement or oversight.
Senator Lyons.
So if, let's just for a minute, suppose that you were responsible for contracting the analysis and reaching out for a consultant to do this work. Would you work with AOE to ensure that their concerns and interests were met as the RFP went out?
My sense would be yes, but I think that might really be a better question posed to Catherine. I'm not usually
Okay.
involved in the RFP processes.
Yeah. So, I mean, my experience with this is that that's how it happens. And then there's a sense of independence and objectivity that comes along with having JFO involved as compared with having the administration involved. Not that I think AOE is terrific and can do the work, but, and then the question is, can they do the work? But I think having the consultant available, I know we worked with one this summer who was hired by JFO, but we worked very closely with the consultant, and the report reflected the work, legislative work, as well as the consultant work. And I could see that this would happen with AOE. There could be that the work is going on and there's a cooperative process. I think that for me is really important, having cooperation, but not having one entity go off and do the work without maintaining contact. That doesn't work.
You know, I'll be honest, this isn't something I want to spend a ton of time on. I'm fine if AOE or whatever.
Whoever
What do you want to do?
I'm a little persuaded by Senator Lyons' point right there. And as I look at what they're going to be tasked with doing, they're going to be assessing how the money gets distributed to the K through 12 contractor. But having that sort of less biased, I think the AOE maybe will have a finger on the scale, maybe, but I'm new.
I don't know.
It just seems like JFO seems like a good neutral arbiter of finding the right contractor to make recommendations that might go against vested interests of AOE. But I feel like it just casts aspersions on people's intents and motives, so I would like to retract that last statement.
I want everybody to
Good thing
be
Jeff's
totally
the
immersed in the work.
Sorry?
I want everyone who's doing it to be totally immersed in the work, and
Yeah.
that includes AOE.
Right.
If they're going to show
You mind
disinterest
if I take
because
this
they're
off there
not
for a
doing
second?
it, then they should do it.
Senator Hooker, what do you want to do on this one?
I think that Senator Lyons makes a good point, and is AOE the one that's going to be doing the report? Is
Yeah.
that, and so what are they going to do? Just take what JFO gives them and put it on paper and send it out to
Contractor
us?
will get-
So what the contractor says, and so I think
just
they
seems
need
to-
to be
yeah.
involved so that
Yeah,
they,
it does kind of seem a little strange to me not to give it to AOE myself. I mean, they're all,
But if you want to do JFO, you can say they shall consult with AOE before the contract is signed or something, and that's my only concern is that JFO would execute a contract not realizing something that AOE as the experts and
yeah.
overseers of CTE would say, oh, why didn't the scope of work include this part? Now we have to write this report, but we weren't involved in the contract, so we didn't know you didn't include it, but now the contract's been signed.
doesn't mind if we just keep it with AOE?
Okay.
Give it to AOE, is that all right?
I'm fine.
Is that all right?
Yeah.
I mean, if we give it, yeah. Okay, thank you, Patrick. Good to see you.
Sure. You need anything else for now?
I think we're okay right now.
Okay.
You don't want to spend another 20 minutes on this?
Mr. Hall, would you make that change? I want to get back to 727.
Yeah, so basically you just want AOE to do the whole thing, forget the JF
Yeah.
report. Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
Tom, thanks for coming to Senate Ed. Tell us what's on your mind as it relates to the language that Representative James brought us through yesterday.
Sure. Well, great to see everybody. Thanks for having me in. For the record, I'm Tom Cheney. I'm the Executive Director of Advanced Vermont. So we're talking about Section 39, and that is found on page 56. Just a quick refresher, I think this committee knows, Advance Vermont is a nonprofit organization focused on increasing post-secondary attainment in the state. And we do that through increasing equity and focusing on increasing equity in attainment and strengthening connections between education, training, and employment. We're really rooted in this goal that I think was mentioned yesterday, that was codified in 2019 through Act 80, that 70% of working age Vermonters will hold a credential of value by 2025. And if we're at about 52.6% now, if we want to be specific, and if we continue at the current rate, we will not meet that goal until 2043, which is 18 years late. So we worked on Section 39 with the Vermont Department of Labor and AOE. It had been another bill, I think, as Representative James mentioned, and we worked on this language with them. And it largely focuses on the work to change the narrative around post-secondary education training by increasing the understanding of the importance of the attainment goal, the value of post-secondary education and training, and the variety of pathways to help Vermonters advance in their career. So I don't know exactly how much you want me to talk about this provision and the work we're doing, but I might just kind of end before I turn it over to questions by saying you'll recall that some of the work that we're doing here and that's tied into this section is around launching Myfuturevt.org, which is a one-stop shop for career and education resources in the state. And I believe that I pulled it up on the screen and shared it with you last year. I think it had maybe just been launched or was just about to be launched at that point. And so folks can go in and kind of explore careers through detailed resources and database about the careers in Vermont, learn about the various types of credentials and search for credential programs, and then also get connected to the real life supports and resources and the services that can help Vermonters overcome the barriers they have to access and ultimately attain their career, education, and training goals. So Myfuturevt, in short of a year now, has reached about 16,000 people or users, and that we beat our goal of 10,000 in about 7 or 8 months. So we've had really good uptake rate from the work, and have the other piece of work that's really fundamental to Myfuturevt, but also has other benefits to the state, is the work we're doing to collect post-secondary credential information. And this has resulted in a bunch of those being posted to the site. We've had formed partnerships with over half of Vermont's colleges and universities. We're well on our way with CTEs and with other non-degree credential providers. And of the providers that we have on board right now, they account for nearly 75% of the 1,700 post-secondary credentials offered in the state. So we're in good shape with that work. And this provision in H703 really helps us to continue this work and tracks the course for us to do it in concert with the Department of Labor and Agency of Education. And we had a very good collaborative conversation to get to this language with them, and they welcome us into this space. I might just really quickly address a question that I know was raised yesterday around kind of the VSAC connection. And so VSAC serves as our fiscal agent and provides operational support. They previously provided funding for us, but to seed us as a new organization. And now we are fully supported by fundraising that we do in-house and through state funds that we received last year from you all. So we are organized as a program of VSAC. So funds directed to VSAC would kind of just flow right to us. I think that the language is drafted would probably work in that way. It's not dissimilar from the language that was drafted last year in our appropriation. I will say the question around the performance-based contract language is one that is a fair question, and I am not sure why that was inserted. I believe that it was put in perhaps in-house appropriations, but I do not believe that it received any discussion. So I'm not quite sure why it says performance-based contract and kind of if there are implications there. I do appreciate that being raised yesterday as a question. I believe the intent is to allocate the full for $150,000 in order to pursue the objectives listed. And as you heard from Representative James yesterday, we are hopeful that you may help make a recommendation that we restore these funds back to the $350,000. The $150,000 will not allow us to fully complete to the degree that we would want to the charge of this section. So I'll stop there.
Any questions for Mr. Keeney? At some point, I don't think we've had some of your students in. It's sometimes this stuff is, we know you have a great website, you've got good numbers, but it'd be good to hear how people have reached you, what difference you're really making in people's lives. That probably will not happen this year, unless it's at the very end of session and we have a couple of minutes at some point. But yeah, I think one of the questions I guess we also had yesterday is, so you've reached 16,000 people, but let's say over the past year, how many certificates have you granted? Or sort of, gotten people to that final stage, whatever that might be.
Right. Yeah, you raise a really good point. And we are in the middle of, now that we're at about a year or almost a year of the site being launched, we're now going through and trying to really get some of that qualitative feedback about how's it going, what can we learn? So we will be doing some focus groups not too long. So we don't serve like a specific student, right? This is a public website that folks use. And so we have to go back and kind of reach out to our partners and say, can you help us identify folks who have used the site? And we want to pull them together and do some focus groups. We may do some other types of surveys and things for folks that we know have used the site, and to ask them those type of questions. So we know how many people have used the site. We have some other specifics about that, but really, how are they using it? How is it beneficial to them? Those are things that we are capturing in bits and pieces, but we do want to make sure that we have a really, really strong way of collecting that information. So we're right now in the midst of working on that. And so definitely by next year, we will be able to.
How many certificates over the past 12 months?
So that's not something that we can tell you from this site.
Okay.
What we can tell you is from going through maybe some of these focus groups and some of these other surveys we may try to do, asking people, did they use the site to enroll in something?
Oh,
so we have to go back and do some research there, since
Okay.
we don't have a confined population of people that we work with on a regular basis. What we can now track is, we could pull up now, how many people were clicking from CCV's bookkeeping credential to CCV's website. So that at least indicates an interest level. And then,
Okay. So when you talk about 16,000 people that you've reached, how do you define reached? I mean, does this include just people who visit the site and then, are you just counting that, or is it people that you've actually had interactions with?
Yeah, so that's a good point around the usage of language. So we had 16,000 unique users, and we anticipate, and it may be closer to 17 now. I know we're getting close to 1 year. We think by 1 year we'll have about 17,000 users. And so these are unique individuals coming to the site at least once. We have a lot of people coming back more than once. And so there's that piece. We also know that through our advertising, we have gotten it in front of a lot more people. So there's messaging that goes around this too, right? And people may not be ready to use the site, but we're starting to get them aware of it. So we're doing a lot of that. And I don't know how many people we've reached that way in terms of sometimes they'll call them impressions on an ad, that kind of thing, but thousands and thousands and thousands. So that's maybe the quick overview.
Yeah. All right. Thank you very much. We're going to leave it there for now. We may have you back as we continue to make our way through 703, but that's very helpful. Thanks, Tom.
Okay, I appreciate it.
Mr. Hall, we have an amendment, and for committee, and I'm curious to know how Health and Welfare is handling this. I believe you're going into economic development tomorrow as well?
I went today.
You went today?
Yeah, where ours is all, well, we might have some modifications to the language.
So this is just the start of
We should show you what we do.
conversation, but Mr. Hall has been listening to some of our conversations. I'm passing the stapler, Thomas. Yes. Yeah.
This is not good.
That's that.
I didn't know. But that's rude, when somebody asks you to pass it, then you use it before.
It is, so passing the salt, control the honor, the gravy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I see the stapler?
Yeah, sure. Maybe have Senator Hooker.
Can I use it?
Yeah, maybe problems. So this is tomorrow, Senator Sorokin is asked, just to give him an update on how we're making our way through this bill, recognizing they probably won't vote it out, I think sometime next week, but I wanted to sort of get us started. The other thing before we start that I'm going to ask you, David, to add to this draft is in our bill, H716, which is a miscellaneous education bill, section 4 has some workforce development language and an appropriation to deal with the teacher shortage. I'm also wondering if you would add that to a new draft of this that I can bring in bring in tomorrow morning. We'll of course keep it in 716, but that's where you can find the language that we'll just add to this as well. Just trying to get it in a bunch of different spots. So, any questions on that before you take us through this?
Can you tell me the attorney who's working on that bill so I can be sure to get the most current version of it?
716 is Ms. St. James. Yeah.
The airport governance thing on there too.
Yeah, if you want to throw something on there, that would be great.
No.
We
Need an
saw
airport,
that.
117 pages? No way.
Well, if you just put school in that word, airport school. Mr. Hall, the floor is yours. I've got to let folks go probably in about 10 minutes, but if you would take us through this draft, that would be great.
Yeah. David Hall, Legislative Council, you should be looking at draft 2.1 right now, just couched it for your reference as a.
We have 1.1 printed out in front of us, H703.
Right, sorry, the header is not updated, but the bottom right footer should say 2.2.
Yeah.
D2.
Yeah.
So in section 1, this may be more than what you have in mind. I was obviously listening to your discussions about wanting to ensure that these opportunities are available to women and to others who may not historically have been perceived as participating at equal rates in workforce development programs. Was not certain whether you had that in mind for particular sections of this bill and these programs or for the whole thing. So for the moment,
Senator Lyons, it's your idea. You put this forward. Does this meet your goals?
I'm looking at the yellow language on the first page. And I think it looks good. It's an umbrella. And it doesn't specify any particular workforce area or ethnic or racial or gender area, or age. So I think it's great. Yeah, it's a good.
Okay.
It's a good. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm glad it reflects what you were interested in seeing.
Yep. Thank you.
So there's actually no change in the next piece other than to designate it as 1A. And then sections 1B and 1C, I'm going to have to hand off to Senator Lyons. These come from S165 as introduced, and I don't know anything about them.
Okay.
So before we do that, if we could just want to go back. So just the implementation purpose. So this is section 1, you're talking here specifically, again, about the $2.5 million that's going to the University of Vermont,
No, this would apply to the entire bill.
to the entire bill. Okay.
Yep.
That's helpful.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe they'll pick it up.
Yeah, no, I think this is good. Okay. Senator Lyons, your sections.
So this is an area where we know that various mental health and substance use disorder professionals are offered workshops and trainings that perhaps can be, and they are frequently offered as updates to their job, but they could conceivably be adapted as course requirements or attainment for their advanced degree. So this simply asks for an assessment of what's out there, what workshops, what continuing education opportunities are offered to these various folks, and then how they might be translated into college credit. And that's all it is. So it's a request to look at this information.
Seems great.
Yeah, it was a little bill that I introduced. We didn't have time to look at it, and we just felt that it
Sure, bring it down, right?
comes here
Yep.
rather than
Yep.
there.
That seems good. Really good. Okay, Mr. Hall, back to you.
So moving on to section 16, in what is section 16 in the bill currently, the CTE construction and rehab program. Based on your comments, I've tried to reorient this towards tightening it up, ensuring that it's focused on affordable housing or community benefits. So you'll see on page 5, I'm striking the construction projects here because this is really step 1 of the process of a proposal and an application. We say these same things again later on. So I'm going to just strike them out here and say, step 1, identify projects that would be appropriate for CTE programs. And we'll come to what projects are eligible later on in the draft. Under 2, basically saying that before they, or during, while they're doing the application process, the CTE Center shall consult with the board and other organizations to identify, consider potential funding partners. This just ensures that everybody is looking close at leveraging and protecting ed fund dollars, which you guys were concerned about, I think. Page 7. So now we're in the eligibility criteria, and this is where we're going to talk about what types of projects would receive consideration. So a project to be eligible has to meet the following eligibility criteria. And 1, it involves the rehabilitation of one of the following types of property that require repair and improvement. So A, a blighted or otherwise non-code compliant residential property that results in a building not more than 4 dwelling units that are affordable to seniors, households of lower income, or other communities that need access to affordable housing. So that last piece I sort of had in mind, refugee or immigrant populations. I mean, those may overlap with households of lower income, but you guys were talking specifically about ensuring that, if it's a housing project, it's going to go to somebody with a real housing need. So that's sort of the thrust behind 1A. 1B, municipal facilities, wastewater treatment, town hall, whatever. Or C, school buildings or related educational facilities. So this does not include a commercial project that has a community benefit, because I was not clear if that was something you were interested in. So for instance, renovation of a store in a rural downtown or something like that. Right now, this does not contemplate a privately owned or operated commercial project.
Right.
So, Mr. Hall, I just got to say, this is great language, and I really appreciate it. It's amazing how Ledge Council turns these things around and kind of contemplates comments made by the people that run for these offices, like myself. I just will say, I hope I didn't misinterpret the purpose of this with the revolving loan fund. Does it not make sense to have municipal facilities or school buildings? As I read this section, it wasn't clear to me that this has to be for a loan. It could be used to pay for educational opportunities that might benefit these facilities. But am I misunderstanding what the loan fund is used for?
Well, I think it goes back to that question of whether or not this is the way it will be implemented involves acquisition, renovation, and then sale or transfer. And I think that's the only way the money is actually going to revolve, is if they, acquire a property and then resell it and either break even or they make money, in which case they can revolve the loan, and then it's up to you who gets the benefits above and beyond the loan value. But if they're going to work on a project like a municipal facility or a school, where they're not going to acquire the property and they're not going to essentially, for lack of a better word, flip it, then they're not going to realize any gain. And in fact, they're going to realize a loss. I will say that the possibility of a loss, again, is not inconsistent with the testimony on the House side, which, as I said before, envisions certainly the possibility that these endeavors will lose money and that all of this money will not revolve and in fact will deplete over time, but for the benefit of education. So it's really a policy choice on, what you want, where you want to put your focus, and really it sort of has to be divided among the educational benefit, the community benefit, and the perpetuity of the funding benefit, right?
Yeah.
So I'll just say that this is great language to me. An open question is, and I don't have a strong opinion if we want to make eligible commercial properties with community benefit. I'm neither for or against it. Open suggestion.
Yeah, no, I think this is good. I also appreciate the good point that, some money will be lost, but there hopefully will be some opportunities where the fund will be replenished. But I think tomorrow I'm just going to be going in and saying, hey, this is kind of where we're at. Here are some of the things. We're going to continue this work, but this is generally where the committee is moving. But I'm fine with adding commercial properties in downtown rural areas.
Community benefit.
For a community benefit.
Okay.
Did you hear that, Mr. Hall?
Indeed.
Okay, great.
All right.
Does Ledge Council get to sleep? I mean, it's amazing how hard these people work.
I know.
Are you feeling better, sir?
I am not feeling better.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. It's almost May. So I'll add back commercial properties with community benefits as it
And this is
appeared.
where
I'll use the language as it appeared before.
Okay.
So on
And
page
then finally, go ahead.
on page 8 of 9, as to the affordability question, you'll see I've changed the may to shall, so that if appropriate in the circumstances, the board shall condition funding for a project on the inclusion of one or more mechanisms addressing the affordability of the property upon rent or sale. I'll note, the lead-in language obviously still preserves some level of flexibility if it's either not a residential property or it just doesn't work for the project. But if you guys, if you wanted to tighten it up even further, you could say it shall condition funding on affordability measures if it's a residential project, if you want to completely close the loophole.
Okay. No,
Yeah, I think we'll keep it as it was.
Okay. And then the
Yeah.
last piece affects the funding proceeds and the revolving nature of this fund. And as we discussed in a previous session, it's not completely clear in the House version, what happens if there's a win, what happens if there's a loss, who pays, is the CTE center held harmless, et cetera. So 2 and 3 go to addressing that point. And I'll give you a moment to read that if you need it so you can digest it.
Okay,
All
so if
right.
you would add our teacher shortage language, and what we'll do is, tomorrow at 10 a.m., I don't know if you're going to be in economic development as well.
I've not been asked to be there at this point, but I believe I can be. I'll have to check my calendar.
Okay, that would be great. Daphne, would you make sure that, economic development knows that we're gonna need some support in there from Ledge Council at 10 a.m. tomorrow? That'd be great. And then we'll return to this, I'm sure, after we get feedback from, economic development. And we'll continue on this work tomorrow afternoon and a little bit into next week. Hope you feel better.
Thanks a lot. Have a good evening.
Really do. Yeah. Bye-bye.